Tonight we drift together through 3 of Japan's most atmospheric ghost tales, each retold in a way that soothes and invites deep rest. This is a journey through the quiet landscapes of old Japan, where snow falls in shimmering veils, where bamboo forests whisper in the dusk, and where the spirits of folklore move softly through the world, never in anger, never in fear, but in gentle remembrance of the lives once lived beneath lantern light. We begin by stepping into the stillness of winter, into a white world where every footstep disappears as soon as it is made. Then we will drift toward the quiet waters of an ancient well, where a gentle spirit counts not to frighten, but to remember. And finally we will journey north, into an old wooden household in the Tohoku region, where a small child spirit plays among tatami rooms and brings warmth and luck to anyone who treats them with kindness. But first we settle the body. You may lie down or simply rest where you are. Let your shoulders fall, let your breath lengthen, and allow the outside world to slip quietly away. So let us begin. The night is crisp, and the air smells faintly of pine and distant wood smoke. Imagine a small mountain village in the late Edo period, tucked between rolling hills and deep forests. Snow covers the rooftops like soft white quilts. Lanterns sway gently in the wind, their glow muted by falling snowflakes. A narrow path traces its way up the mountain, disappearing into swirling drifts of white. On this mountain travellers sometimes lose their way, but they are not alone, for in the hush of winter storms a pale figure glides across the snow, leaving no footprints behind. Her robes ripple like mist. Her hair, long and dark as midnight, floats weightlessly around her. She is neither warm nor cold, only still and impossibly serene. She is Yuki-Onna. And her story begins on a night when the snow fell thicker than anyone in the village could remember. The winter storm had begun in the late afternoon, quiet at first like a soft sigh rolling down from the mountains. By nightfall, it had become a swirling white curtain, so dense that even lanterns held close to the chest glowed only faintly through the drifting flakes. 2 travellers, a master carpenter named Haru and his young apprentice Ren, had been caught on the forest road while returning from a distant village, where they had repaired a temple gate before the new year. They had planned to reach their home before dark, but the storm had moved faster than the old stories ever warned. The wind pushed at them from all sides, turning their straw cloaks into heavy sodden burdens. Their lantern had been blown out twice, and now only a dull glow from the snow-covered clouds lit the world in dim silver. "We must find shelter," Haru said, raising his voice above the wind. Ren nodded, teeth chattering, his breath forming small clouds that vanished instantly in the cold. They knew this mountain path well, yet tonight it felt endless. Their footsteps disappeared behind them as soon as they were made. The trees groaned under the weight of snow, and the world seemed to shrink to a small bubble of space around the 2 figures. Then through the blur of white, Haru noticed a faint shape, a tiny hunting lodge, long abandoned, half buried beneath the snow. Relief washed through him. "There," he said, pointing. The pair forced their way through the deep drifts until they reached the wooden structure. Its door hung loosely on its hinges, but it offered shelter. Inside, the air was cold but still. A small pile of old firewood lay in one corner, half frozen but usable. They lit a fire, and the room filled with the comforting scent of burning cedar. Ren curled close to the warmth, sighing as, feeling returned to his fingers, Haru sat beside him, grateful for the chance to rest. But as the fire settled into a steady glow, something shifted in the air, so subtle that Haru thought at first it was only his imagination. The wind outside fell suddenly quiet, almost unnaturally so. The flames flickered, bending gently toward the open door. Haru turned. A woman stood in the doorway. She wore a pure white kimono, untouched by snow or moisture, though the storm raged behind her. Her skin was pale as fresh frost. Smooth and luminescent, long black hair drifted around her as though floating in water. Her eyes were soft, not cold, dark pools that reflected the firelight with a quiet sadness. Ren drew in a breath, but the woman raised one slender hand, and he fell still, not afraid, only mesmerized. "Do not fear," she said, her voice soft as falling snow. "You have wandered far tonight." Haru bowed instinctively, heart steadying instead of racing. Something about her presence felt peaceful, even tender. "Please," she said, stepping inside without leaving the faintest trace on the floorboards. "May I warm myself by your fire?" Haru and Ren exchanged a brief glance, the kind that carried a dozen unspoken questions, but neither could bring themselves to deny her. Something about the woman felt older than the storm, older than the mountain itself. And yet, there was a gentleness in the way she lowered her head, as though asking permission with true humility. "Of course," Haru said softly. "Please come sit by the fire." The woman glided forward, her kimono whispering like drifting snowflakes. She settled a short distance from the flames, folding her hands neatly in her lap. The fire's glow lit her face in warm gold, yet she cast no shadow on the timber wall behind her. Ren stared in quiet fascination. Her presence soothed the sharp edges of the storm within him. The fear, the cold, the exhaustion, all seemed to dissolve. "You were travelling in such weather?" the woman asked, her gaze drifting from Ren to Haru with a softness that felt like moonlight on snow. "We were caught returning home," Haru replied. "This storm, it arrived faster than expected." "They often do," she said, her voice carrying an almost musical sigh. "Winter has a will of its own, especially on this mountain." Her words lingered in the room, gentle but heavy with meaning. Haru sensed there was something deeper behind them, but he did not press. Instead he studied her more closely. There was no frost in her hair, no dampness on her kimono. Even the cold air around them seemed to settle, growing quieter, more still. Outside the wind continued to howl, but now it sounded far away, muted, as though cushioned by an unseen presence. Ren's shivering eased completely. In fact, he felt strangely warm, almost lulled, like a child listening to a lullaby, half remembered from infancy. The woman tilted her head. "The mountain can be unkind, but it does not wish for suffering. It listens to those who speak gently, and to those who walk with respect." Haru nodded. "We try to. Our work takes us across many paths." "I know," she said quietly. He looked up. "Pardon." She smiled, a tiny wistful curve of her lips. "Travellers often pass through these forests. Their footsteps whisper stories to the snow. Yours are honest ones." Ren blinked, not entirely understanding, though the words made him feel oddly proud. The fire crackled softly. Outside, the storm's fury faded further, as if the very presence of the woman calmed it. She looked toward Ren, her gaze warm. "You are tired?" He nodded, his eyelids heavy. "Sleep," she whispered. "The snow cannot trouble you here." Without fear, Ren lay down on his bundle of travel cloth, the fire's glow softening into a hazy orange blur. His breathing slowed almost immediately. Haru watched him, grateful but puzzled. "He trusts you," he murmured. The woman did not look away from the flames. "Children often recognize what adults have forgotten." "And what is that?" Haru asked gently. "That not all spirits are meant to frighten." Her words settled like snowflakes, and for the first time Haru understood who, what, sat before him. But he felt no fear, only stillness, only gratitude, and only the presence of Yuki-Onna. For a long moment, Haru simply sat with her words, letting them drift through the quiet lodge like soft winter breath. He had heard tales of Yuki-Onna since childhood, stories told around fires during long northern nights. Some described her as a bringer of frostbite and fear, a spirit who lured men to their icy doom. Others portrayed her as a guardian of the mountains, watching over travellers with a stern but compassionate gaze. Looking at the woman before him, serene and luminous in the firelight, he sensed the truth lay somewhere in the stillness between those tales. "You knew my name?" Haru asked after a moment, his voice gentle. She nodded. "The mountain remembers those who walk its paths with care. You have repaired the temple gates, the shrine steps, the bridge that crosses the stream, small acts, but ones the spirits notice. Haru felt a quiet shiver, not of fear, but of humility. I only do what is needed. Your hands honour the places they touch, she said softly. Even the snow knows your patience. He bowed his head without fully realizing he was doing so. Her words felt like blessings, carried on winter winds. The fire crackled again, a small burst of sparks rising and fading. Yuki-Onna's gaze followed them with a distant expression, as though she saw far beyond the wooden walls into memories carried down through centuries of snowfall. Why help us? Haru asked gently. If I may ask. Another soft smile touched her lips. Because the snow listens, and tonight it heard struggle where there should have been peace. She turned her face toward the shuttered window, where snow piled thick against the outside frame. I do not enjoy suffering, and winter's beauty is meant to be survived, not feared. Haru exhaled, relieved. Then we owe you our lives. No, she murmured. You owe nothing. The storm would not have taken you, not tonight. There was something almost sad in her voice, like the faintest echo of a memory she carried alone. Ren shifted in his sleep, murmuring something unintelligible. Yuki-Onna watched him with the tenderness of an older sister, or perhaps a mother who could never hold her child. Her expression softened in a way Haru could not quite name. You have travelled many winters, she said quietly, yet you carry warmth with you. Not all do. Haru tilted his head. You speak of warmth as though it has weight. It does, she replied. The warmth of kindness leaves footprints even where the snow tries to hide them. He thought about that, touched by the unexpected wisdom in her words. Outside the wind shifted, no longer a howl, but a long low sigh. The storm was easing. The woods beyond the walls seemed to settle like a great white creature curling into sleep. Yuki-Onna rose gracefully, her kimono falling around her like drifting mist. Haru stood as well, unsure what to say. The storm will pass soon, she said. When it does, the path home will reveal itself. And you? Haru asked softly. She turned toward the door, her form outlined by the faint grey dawn beginning to push against the night. I follow the snow, she whispered. Then with a final look, soft knowing, almost grateful, she stepped into the storm. No footprints followed her. Haru watched until the swirling white swallowed her form completely. Haru stood in the doorway for a long time, the cold brushing against his skin like the ghost of a touch. The storm had softened into a gentle fall, flakes drifting lazily, almost playfully. No longer driven by the harsh breath of the mountain wind, it was as though the storm itself had bowed in respect as Yuki-Onna departed. He closed the door softly, careful not to wake Ren. The fire had begun to settle into glowing embers, casting a deep amber warmth across the lodge. Haru sat beside his apprentice, watching the boy's peaceful sleep. Ren's face, so recently pinched with cold and fear, was now relaxed, even serene. Haru touched his shoulder gently. Ren, he whispered. The storm has passed. Ren blinked awake slowly, stretching like a cat emerging from a long dream. Master, did I fall asleep? You did. Ren sat up, rubbing his eyes. I dreamt of a woman, dressed in white. She was kind. He paused, searching for the right words. She looked like winter, but one winter. A winter that wanted to protect us. Haru's breath caught quietly in his throat. That was no dream. Ren looked at him, puzzled. She was here, Haru said gently. Yuki-Onna visited us. Most boys Ren's age would have reeled back, wide-eyed, trembling with the idea of a ghost standing so near. But Ren only nodded slowly, with a thoughtful calm that surprised even himself. I wasn't afraid, he said quietly. I felt safe. Haru felt the same, though he had not been bold enough to admit it until now. They gathered their belongings, preparing to continue down the mountain. The door creaked open, and a cold but gentle breeze swept in. The world outside had transformed, snow lay thick across the ground, but the sky had begun to brighten, pale gold stretching across the horizon. The forest trees bowed under their shimmering coats of snow, and distant temple bells rang faintly through the morning air. But the most curious sight of all was the narrow footpath stretched before them. Last night it had vanished beneath a raging storm. Now it was perfectly clear. A winding trail through the snow, distinct and precise, as though something delicate and deliberate had swept the snow aside in long, graceful strokes. "Master," Ren whispered, "did she do this?" Haru studied the trail. The path cut through drifts that should have been untouched. No footprints marked it. No heavy snow bent its edges. It simply existed, clean and luminous, guiding them home. "Yes," Haru said softly. "I believe she did." They began to walk, following the gentle curve of the mountain path. The further they went, the easier the journey felt. The snow did not cling to their legs. The wind did not bite. Even the cold carried a strange softness, as if an unseen presence shielded them. A few times Ren glanced behind them. Haru did too. Neither expected to see her, and yet both felt, not watched, but accompanied, protected. When they finally reached the village, warm smoke rising from chimneys and the scent of miso drifting through the crisp morning air, Haru paused. Snowflakes landed softly on his coat, melting instantly. He looked up at the mountains, their white peaks glowing with dawn. "Thank you," he whispered. Far away, a faint shimmer moved across the snow, as if winter itself had bowed in reply. Life in the village resumed its gentle rhythm as winter days stretched on. Haru and Ren returned to their workshop near the riverbank, where the scent of fresh-cut wood mixed pleasantly with the crisp mountain air. They repaired fishing boats, mended old temple gates, and carved small charms for the New Year festivities. Yet in quiet moments, when the snow fell lightly outside, or when dawn lit the frost in soft pink hues, Haru would catch Ren gazing toward the mountain. "Do you think she still watches?" Ren asked one evening as they swept snow from the workshop entrance. Haru smiled, his breath misting in the cold air. "I think she watches over any who treat the mountain kindly." Ren nodded with quiet satisfaction. Even after days had passed, neither spoke of fear. Instead, they carried a peaceful memory, a brush with something ancient yet gentle, a reminder that the world held spirits who protected as much as they wandered. Winter slowly loosened its hold. Snow thinned. Icicles dripped steadily under softening sunlight. The river cracked open from its frozen stillness, and the village prepared for the coming spring. One evening, the travelling storyteller arrived, a familiar figure wrapped in layered robes, leading a donkey carrying boxes of scrolls. Percussion instruments and small puppets used in his tales. Villagers gathered eagerly at the tea house, where lantern light painted the walls in amber warmth. Haru and Ren joined the crowd, happy for a night of stories. The storyteller, a man with a voice as smooth as old silk, bowed deeply before beginning. "Tonight," he announced, "I shall share tales of spirits not meant to frighten, but to remind us of the thin and beautiful line between the living and the remembered." Ren leaned forward in his seat. Haru's heartbeat steadied, knowing well the truth of those words. The storyteller lifted a painted scroll depicting a grand samurai mansion beneath a crescent moon. "This Yuki-Onna," he said softly, "is the tale of Okiku, a spirit whose sorrow became a whisper that lives on not in fear, but in longing. A story from the time of great lords and castle stones, a story of quiet courage, remembrance, and the soft counting of plates that echo gently beneath the stars." The tea house fell still. Even the lantern flames seemed to pause. "You may have heard other versions," the storyteller continued, his voice lowering into a tranquil rhythm. "Cruel versions, harsh versions. But tonight, we shall follow the path of truth that has long been overlooked, the truth of a woman whose spirit seeks neither vengeance nor terror, but peace." Ren's eyes widened. Haru felt the air shift, preparing itself for something delicate. The storyteller unrolled more of the scroll, revealing a moonlit well surrounded by swaying bamboo, water gleaming like polished glass. "In the great house of Lord Aoyama," he began, "there once lived a young maid named Okiku, whose loyalty was as enduring as the stones of the castle itself." He paused, letting the quiet settle like evening dew. "Let us step now into that world, and listen." And so, as snow melted outside and winter gave way to spring, a new spirit's tale began to unfold, softly, gently, like ripples in a moonlit well. In the service wing of Lord Aoyama's grand estate, Okiku moved with the quiet grace of someone who understood both devotion and discretion. The castle grounds stretched across terraces of stone, with winding gardens of pine and plum trees that rustled peacefully even on breezy nights. Lanterns hung from wooden beams, casting warm light on polished floors and tatami rooms scented faintly of cedar. Okiku's duties were simple, but she performed them with care, preparing tea, tending to scrolls, keeping the treasured porcelain plates in perfect order. Those plates, imported from distant lands, were the pride of the household, glimmering with blue ink scenes of mountains, cranes and flowing rivers. Only a few servants were trusted to handle them, and Okiku was foremost among them. She had an unusual calm to her, a quietness that made even hurried tasks feel like part of a ritual. Some said her presence softened the air around her, as though a gentle breeze followed her footsteps. Despite the estate's grandeur, Okiku felt most at peace in the garden. At night, after her chores, she would walk to the old well behind the main hall, a round stone structure covered in moss and framed by bamboo that swayed like delicate fingers in the wind. She did not fear the well. To her, it was a place of reflection, a mirror for her thoughts. Sometimes she would lean over and watch the moon ripple on the water's surface. Other nights she listened to the faint echoes rising from its depths, as though the well itself breathed softly in sleep. One spring evening, as cherry blossoms drifted like pale snow across the courtyard, Okiku carried a stack of porcelain plates from the kitchen to the Lord's dining room. The moon was bright, and the air fragrant with the sweetness of plum blossoms. She paused at the well. The water shimmered. "1," she whispered, tracing the rim of the top plate with her finger. Counting helped her stay focused. It was a habit she had carried since childhood, soothing and familiar. Each number was like a bead on a string, gentle, rhythmic grounding. 2, 3, 4. Her voice mingled with the soft night breeze. Somewhere deeper in the estate, footsteps echoed through the corridors. A samurai guard making his rounds. Okiku paid little attention. Her world had narrowed to the smoothness of porcelain and the peaceful song of counting. 5, 6. A bamboo leaf drifted onto her sleeve. She brushed it away with a tender smile. 7. She finished the count, reassured that all the plates were present, and carried them carefully into the dining room. Inside, however, the atmosphere was different. Lord Aoyama sat at the low table examining a scroll. His brow was furrowed, and his expression carried the weight of a man burdened by matters unspoken. He looked up as Okiku entered. "You are late," he said, though his voice lacked true irritation. "My apologies, my lord," Okiku replied with a bow. "I paused to make sure none of the plates were chipped." He nodded, motioning for her to set them down. As she arranged them with practiced precision, the lord studied her, his gaze lingering a moment too long, not with unkindness, but with something more complicated, something that would soon shift the quiet rhythm of her life. Lord Aoyama's gaze held a curious weight, as though he wished to speak yet hesitated, caught between propriety and some unformed longing. Okiku kept her eyes lowered, sensing the shift without acknowledging it. She had worked in the estate long enough to read subtle changes in mood, but this one left her uneasy, not afraid, simply aware. "Okiku," the lord said after a moment, folding the scroll with deliberate care, "you have served this household with admirable dedication. "Thank you, my lord." She bowed, her movements steady. "You handle the treasured plates more carefully than anyone. Even the steward praises your diligence." "It is an honor to be entrusted with them," she replied softly, arranging the last dish so the painted cranes aligned perfectly. Oyama watched her slender hands, the way they moved with reverence. "Tell me, do you enjoy your work here?" She lifted her eyes only briefly, enough to offer a respectful smile. "I take pride in doing what is needed." Aoyama nodded, though there was something thoughtful behind his expression. "Good, good." He shifted slightly, as though searching for the right words. "There is talk among the retainers. They say you spend time by the well at night." Okiku's hands paused for the faintest moment. It was harmless talk, but she answered with honesty. "It is a peaceful place, my lord. The water calms me." "It is also a place of old stories," he mused. "Stories of spirits lingering in the deep." Her smile was faint. "Every place has its stories." Aoyama studied her closely, then rose from the table. "Be careful, Okiku. The estate needs steady hands." She bowed again, waiting until he had left the room before letting out a slow breath. She had not done anything wrong, yet the conversation had coiled around her like thin mist, vague and impossible to grasp. Still, the days passed gently. Cherry blossoms gave way to soft green leaves, the sound of carp splashing in the pond filled warm afternoons. And each evening, Okiku completed her chores with her usual grace, before walking to the well for a moment of quiet. She would count the plates softly before returning them to their cabinet. 1, 2, 3. The numbers became her nightly mantra. 4, 5, 6. Her voice blended with the rustle of bamboo and the distant chirp of night insects. 7. Each count settled her heart, grounding her in the stillness of the estate. But not everyone was soothed by this ritual. Tessin, the senior steward, had grown increasingly uneasy. He was a man of rigid expectations and a mind restless with worry. Rumours of political tension in the region, combined with his deep responsibility for the Lord's valuables, had sharpened his nerves. He watched Okiku quietly from the shadows of the breezeway one night, observing her gentle counting by the well. He noted how carefully she held the plates, how calm she appeared, and somehow that calm unsettled him. "She grows too comfortable," he muttered to himself, "too familiar with what does not belong to her." The wind carried away his words, but the sentiment lingered in his mind like a thorn. And so, as the moon rose full and bright over Lord Aoyama's estate, a quiet tension began to coil beneath the surface of Okiku's peaceful routine. An unnoticed shift that would one day ripple like a stone dropped gently into a still dark well. The following evening the air was warm, with the promise of early summer. Fireflies drifted above the garden pond like floating embers, rising and falling with gentle flickers of light. Okiku finished her tasks early and walked toward the well, carrying the lacquered box that held the treasured plates. The bamboo around the well stirred softly, as if welcoming her. She sat beside the moss-covered stones, lifted the lid and carefully removed each plate with steady hands. Their surfaces gleamed under the moonlight, the painted cranes seeming to stretch their wings more fully. With each night she tended to them. Count by count, Okiku's soft voice filled the garden. 1, 2, 3. Her words flowed like quiet ripples. 4, 5. The sound soothed her, and even the night seemed to lean in to listen. 6. She paused for a moment, watching the moon's reflection shimmer on the water. 7. She placed the final plate down gently, completing the familiar ritual. The act brought her peace, order in a world where her choices were often dictated by duty. But not far away, Tessin watched with tense but narrowed eyes. The steward's suspicion had grown all day, fed by the whispers of his own imagination. He saw Okiku's devotion and mistook it for possessiveness. He noted the care with which she counted the plates and twisted it into something threatening. to him, anything that could disturb the Lord's favour, even unintentionally, was a danger to the household. Tonight, as she returned the plates to the lacquered box, he stepped from the shadows. "Okiku." She looked up, startled but composed. "Good evening, Steward Tessin." He approached slowly, as though each step weighed heavily with unspoken concerns. "You handle the plates often," he said, glancing at the closed box. "It is my assigned duty," she replied carefully. "I ensure they remain in perfect condition." Tessin folded his arms, his gaze sharp. "And if one were to break, what then?" She shook her head softly. "They are safe. I am always careful." "Careful," he echoed, though the word carried doubt rather than reassurance. "The Lord places great value on these plates. Their loss would bring misfortune upon this entire household." Okiku lowered her eyes. "I understand. I will never allow harm to come to them." But Tessin's anxiety had taken root too deeply for her calm assurances to reach him. He stepped closer. "I hope that is true, for your sake." His tone was not threatening, yet the chill of unease wove itself through the air. Okiku bowed respectfully, but when she rose, Tessin was already turning away, disappearing into the corridor like a shadow dissolving. She remained beside the well for a moment longer, letting the night soothe her. The moon reflected clearly in the water, and she felt a strange comfort in its unwavering presence. She whispered faintly, 7 plates, always 7. The bamboo rustled gently, as though in agreement. Then she gathered the box and returned inside, unaware that Tessin, from a hidden corner of the walkway, watched her with a mind clouded by doubt. The story of Okiku's quiet life was beginning to shift, softly, slowly, as all old tales eventually do. But her spirit, grounded in loyalty and peace, remained undisturbed. For now, days passed with the same gentle rhythm. Okiku tended to her tasks, moving through the estate with her characteristic calm. The plum trees deepened into lush summer green, and the scent of warm earth and fresh-cut grass drifted through the open shoji screens. Servants bustled with preparations for the upcoming festival, their footsteps swift but cheerful. Yet beneath this surface harmony, Tessin's agitation grew. He watched Okiku with restless eyes, convinced, without reason, that her devotion to the plates masked some hidden fault, some impending mistake that would tarnish his reputation as steward. He began checking the lacquered box each morning, counting the plates himself, tracing their edges with trembling fingertips. 1, 2, 3, he whispered, breath tight with anxiety. By the time he reached 7, his shoulders would relax only slightly, his mind already imagining the worst. Okiku sensed his unease but did not confront him. She understood that some worries rooted themselves so deeply that no reassurance could untangle them. Instead, she continued her nightly visits to the well, trusting that honesty and diligence would protect her from whatever shadows Tessin feared. One evening, as lanterns flickered across the courtyard, Okiku carried the box of plates toward the well once more. Crickets chirped softly, and a faint breeze stirred the leaves of the plum trees. The estate glowed with tranquil beauty. She knelt beside the well and opened the box, each movement meticulous. 1, she whispered, lifting the first plate. The moonlight reflected across its surface. 2, 3. Her voice was steady, almost musical. 4, 5, 6. She paused before the 7th plate, admiring its delicate blue lines, waves folding into each other like eternal breath. 7. The ritual soothed her, grounding her spirit in the familiar rhythm. She smiled softly, placing each plate back into the box, careful as ever. But tonight, someone else approached. Aoyama, the lord of the estate, walked slowly down the veranda, his wooden sandals tapping lightly on the polished boards. His expression held a quiet heaviness, though his eyes softened when he saw Okiku. "You are diligent as always," he said gently. Okiku bowed. "It is my honor." Aoyama stepped closer, hands clasped behind him. "Tell me, Okiku, Do you ever feel lonely? The question was unexpected. Okiku lifted her gaze slightly, thoughtful. I find comfort in my duties, my lord, and in the quiet moments of the evening. He nodded, though something troubled him. You are a kind spirit. The household benefits from your presence. She bowed again, humbled. I only wish to serve faithfully. Aoyama hesitated. The air between them grew still, heavy with the things he considered but knew he could not say. He admired Okiku, not with desire but with a complicated respect, a recognition of her purity and grace amid the political and emotional turbulence surrounding him. Be cautious, he said at last. Some within the estate are not at peace with themselves. His tone was gentle, but the meaning carried weight. Okiku lowered her head. I understand. He nodded once more, then turned away, disappearing back into the main hall. His departure left a quiet imprint on the air, like a soft echo. Alone again beside the well, Okiku exhaled slowly. The moon shimmered on the surface of the water, and for a brief moment she saw her reflection tremble, as though the well itself felt her unease. But she smiled through it, gathering courage from the night stillness. Trouble, she sensed, was coming, yet her heart remained steady. The following morning arrived warm and bright, sunlight pouring through the estate's wooden latticework in gentle golden stripes. The servants moved quickly, carrying baskets of rice, cloth, and fresh vegetables in preparation for the midsummer offerings. The estate hummed with its familiar rhythm, yet beneath that hum lay a quiet tension, one that Okiku felt more keenly with each passing hour. Tessin had risen before dawn, his mind brimming with restless thoughts. He checked the lacquered box again, hands trembling as he lifted the lid. 1, 2, 3. His voice shook, barely above a whisper. 4, 5, 6. He lifted the 7th plate, pausing as though expecting it to shatter in his hands from a sheer imagination. 7, he breathed, relief flooding him. But even relief felt insufficient. His unease gnawed at him like a small but persistent flame. As Okiku passed through the corridor carrying fresh linens, Tessin watched her, jaw tight. She moved with her usual quiet grace, unaware of the spiraling storm within him. Later that day, a delegation arrived at the estate. Officials from a neighbouring province bringing messages for Lord Aoyama. Their visit brought bustle to the household, and tensions ran high as everyone hurried to prepare a formal meal. Okiku was tasked, as always, with bringing the treasured plates to the dining hall. She carried the lacquered box carefully, her steps light and measured. Tessin followed her silently from a distance, his brow furrowed, hands clasped behind his back. Inside the dining hall, Okiku placed the box on a low table and opened it, checking each plate with the same devotion she gave every day. 1, 2, 3. Tessin watched every move, eyes narrowing. 4, 5, 6. She lifted the 7th plate, inspecting its surface for any hint of damage. 7, she breathed with a soft smile. The moment the plate left her fingers, just for the brief second it took for her to place it on the table, Tessin's anxiety surged. In that fleeting instant his fears found shape in shadows. His imagination twisted Okiku's simple movements into something suspect. What if she dropped one? What if she had already? What if? He stepped forward abruptly. "Okiku," he barked. She startled, turning quickly. The plate wobbled for a fraction of a second before she steadied it with skillful hands. Her heart thumped. "Yes, steward?" "What were you doing?" he demanded, though he had seen everything. "Preparing the plates for the meal," she answered calmly. "You were distracted," he accused. "One nearly slipped. I assure you it did not. I have them well in hand." But panic clouded Tessin's logic. To him her confidence looked like defiance, her calmness a sign of concealment. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If even one plate is missing or damaged, The blame will fall on you. Do you understand? The Lord's trust is not easily kept. Okiku's gaze softened with understanding rather than fear. I know my duty, steward, and I would never betray the trust placed in me. But Tessin heard only threat in her composure. He turned sharply and left the room, the echo of his steps heavy across the polished floorboards. Okiku watched him go, a quiet ache settling in her chest. She wished she could reach the root of his fear, reassure him somehow, but some storms brewed too deep within a person to be calmed by soft words. Still, she lifted each plate again, her motion steady. 1, 2, 3. Counting grounded her. 4, 5, 6. Her voice soothed the air. 7. She inhaled slowly. Whatever came, she would meet it with grace. Evening fell like a soft curtain over Lord Aoyama's estate. Lanterns glowed warmly along the verandas, their light catching on the ripples of the garden pond. The day's bustle faded into a calm hush as servants finished their chores and retreated to their quarters for rest. Okiku, carrying the lacquered box close to her chest, stepped into the quiet courtyard. Though her duties were complete, she wished to perform her nightly ritual, her counting, if only to settle her spirit after Tessin's sharp words. The moon shone bright above her, framed by drifting clouds. She crossed the stepping stones toward the well, feeling the soft tap thrum of summer insects vibrating through the warm air. The bamboo whispered. The moss at the well's base seemed to glow faintly in the moonlight. Okiku knelt and opened the box. 1, she whispered, lifting the first plate. Its painted waves shimmered like silken ribbons beneath the light. 2, 3. The ritual steadied her, soothing the day's unease. 4, 5, 6. A warm breeze swept across her, rustling the leaves overhead. 7. She exhaled deeply, relieved. All was in order, all was well, but she was not alone. From the shadows of the covered walkway, Tessin watched, the moonlight catching the hard line of his jaw. His thoughts had grown darker throughout the day, twisted by imagined disasters and fears that would not release him. He told himself he must protect the Lord's household, that he must ensure no fault, no accident, no betrayal occurred. And by now, in his restless mind, Okiku had become the embodiment of that imagined danger. He stepped forward. Okiku. She turned, startled. Steward Tessin, I didn't hear you approach. He gestured sharply toward the plates, still counting, always counting. It brings me peace, she said gently. It brings me concern, he muttered. She closed the box slowly, careful not to provoke him. Would you like to check the plates yourself? They are all safe. But Tessin's eyes had already shifted to suspicion. You hide your mistakes well, he hissed. I hide nothing. He took a step closer, his voice tightening. The Lord has enough burdens without a careless servant adding to them. Okiku's expression remained calm, though a faint tremor ran through her hands. I would never bring dishonor upon this household. His gaze darkened. Words mean nothing if even one plate goes missing. She shook her head softly. None are missing. Tessin exhaled sharply, his breath shuddering. I must be certain. Okiku reached toward the box, intending to lift the plates one by one to reassure him. But Tessin reached faster. With hands driven by nervous tension rather than reason, he seized the lacquered box. The sudden motion startled Okiku, who instinctively stepped back. Steward, please. He lifted the box, shaking it slightly. Too slightly for true damage, but enough to rattle the plates within. The sound struck her heart like a blow. Tessin, stop! His grip faltered. For one suspended moment, everything slowed. The box tilted. Okiku lunged forward. But gravity moved faster. The lid slipped open, porcelain glimmered under the moonlight, and a single plate slid loose. Okiku gasped as it fell through the air. It struck the stone rim of the well with a sharp, ringing crack, like the cry of a distant bird, then shattered. Fragments skittered across the moss and dropped into the dark water below. A single ripple bloomed across the well's surface. Okiku's hands flew to her mouth, her breath breaking. Tassan stood frozen, horror widening his eyes. The night, which seconds before had felt calm and tender, now held its breath, silent, waiting. For a long, fragile moment, neither Okiku nor Tassan moved. The sound of the breaking plate seemed to hang in the air long after the last shard had fallen into the well. Even the summer insects quieted, as though the estate itself sensed something sacred had been disturbed. Okiku knelt slowly beside the well, her trembling hands reaching for the largest remaining fragment. Moonlight glinted off the jagged porcelain edge, now fractured like a frozen tear. Her breath quivered. It was an accident, she whispered, though her voice carried no blame, only shock. Tesson staggered backward, his face draining of colour. No, this cannot be happening. His hand shook as he pressed it to his forehead. The Lord's plates. Okiku looked up at him, her expression gentle despite the devastation spreading through her chest. Steward Tesson, please, let us go to Lord Aoyama and explain. Explain? Tesson's voice rose, ragged with fear. Explain that I mishandled the plates, that I broke one. They will not believe me. They will say you dropped it. They will say I failed to oversee you properly. His breathing grew uneven, almost frantic. Okiku stood slowly, placing the remaining shards carefully in her hands. I will take responsibility, she said softly. I was the one holding the box. No, Tesson croaked, shaking his head violently. You don't understand. He paced in a desperate circle, fingers curling anxiously. His thoughts raced toward dark corners. If the Lord learns of this, he will punish someone, and if it is not me, his voice cracked, it will be you. Okiku's eyes softened. I'm not afraid, steward. I will tell the truth. You need not. You cannot. He snapped, the words bursting from him like a long-suppressed storm. The sudden force of his voice echoed off the courtyard walls. Okiku stepped back, startled. Tesson froze. He hadn't meant to shout, but fear, hot and tangled, coursed through him. Fear not of Okiku, but of disgrace, of losing the one position in life that gave him meaning. He squeezed his eyes shut. I cannot let the Lord know, he whispered. The courtyard seemed to tilt around them. Okiku held the fragments close, her expression gentle even now. The truth will calm his anger. He is a fair man. Tesson stared at her, as though searching for a lifeline. Fair, he repeated, voice hollow. Fairness does not change what is lost. He took a step closer. Okiku did not retreat. She simply looked at him with a soft sadness. You fear what this means for you, she said quietly. But mistakes happen. I will stand beside you. Her kindness, too steady, too unwavering, cracked something in him. I wish, Tesson's voice faltered. I wish I could believe that. He looked at the well. Its mouth gaped wide, moonlit and still. A terrible idea flickered across his expression, faint, fleeting, but enough for Okiku to sense the danger woven through his panic. Tessan, she whispered, stepping back instinctively. Please, do not let fear guide you. But fear had already taken root. He lunged, not in anger, not in cruelty, but in pure desperate instinct. His hands grabbed her shoulders. She gasped, porcelain fragments falling from her hands in a soft scatter. Forgive me, he choked. And before Okiku could utter another word, he pushed. The world tipped. The moon spun overhead. Her body fell weightlessly, like a blossom cast into the wind. And with a soft splash she disappeared into the well's dark embrace. The water enveloped Okiku, like a curtain of cold silk. For a moment there was only darkness, soft, swirling, endless. Sound faded. The world above seemed impossibly distant, as though she had fallen not into water, but into memory itself. Her limbs slowed, drifting like petals beneath the surface. She waited for panic to rise, for fear to take hold, but instead, a profound calm settled over her. The shock of the fall gave way to stillness, her heartbeat merging with the quiet pulse of the well. Moonlight shimmered faintly overhead, rippling like a lantern reflected on a pond. Through that wavering halo she sensed Tessin leaning over the well's edge, breath ragged, his face a mask of horror and regret. "Okiku," he gasped. "Okiku, forgive me. I didn't mean, please, please." His words fractured against the stone walls, but Okiku's mind felt strangely untethered, floating free of fear, free of pain. No anger rose within her, no bitterness, only a deep and gentle sorrow, not for herself, but for the desperation that had twisted Tessin's heart. She drifted deeper, and in that descent something changed. A warmth blossomed around her, subtle at first, like the lingering glow of spring sunlight. It grew, spreading through her, dissolving the weight of her body, lightening her being until she felt almost weightless. The well embraced her, not as a cold tomb, but as a quiet cradle. She exhaled. "No!" And when she did, her breath did not bubble to the surface. Instead it shimmered, glowing faintly in the water, curling gently like mist. Her thoughts softened, her senses shifted. Okiku felt herself expanding beyond the boundaries of her form. Memories of walking the garden, of counting plates under moonlight, of tending to her duties with steady hands, all drifted outward like fragments of a painted scroll, joining the quiet depths. Above, Tassan's frantic cries blurred into a distant echo. He did not see the soft light rising from the water. He did not see how it gathered around her like a second skin, how it shimmered like silver threads, weaving gently through her hair, her sleeves, the outline of her being. Okiku's eyes opened. They reflected the moon above, but they also held something new, something ancient, serene, and impossibly calm. Her body no longer felt heavy, nor bound. She drifted upward with effortless grace, her form luminous in the water. For a moment her fingertips brushed the rim of the well from below, light passing through them like air. Tassan stumbled back, eyes widening as something pale and shimmering rose toward him, through the water, slow, peaceful, like the moon rising through mist. He fell to his knees. "Okiku!" The surface of the water broke in a soft ripple, then a figure emerged, delicate, translucent, glowing faintly like a lingering lantern flame. It was Okiku, but not as she had been. Her hair floated around of her in billowing streams. Her kimono shimmered like pearl. Her face was serene, her expression one of deep, limitless gentleness. She stood on the water as though it were solid ground. Tassan's breath stopped. He expected fire in her eyes, accusation, anger. But Okiku only looked at him with soft sorrow, not vengeance, not hatred, only quiet understanding, and that more than anything broke him. Tessin collapsed fully to the stone floor, trembling. The moonlight that wrapped Okiku's form illuminated the courtyard in a pale, shimmering glow. It was as though the well itself breathed light into the night, softening every shadow. He covered his face with shaking hands. "Forgive me. Please, forgive me." Okiku stepped toward him, not walking but drifting, her feet gliding a fraction above the ground. Each motion was weightless, as though she moved on currents of moonlight rather than air. The silk of her kimono brushed the stones without sound. When she reached him, she knelt, her form bending in a way that felt achingly human, despite the gentle transparency that now defined her. "Tessin," she murmured, her voice calm and low, like distant water lapping against a shore. He lowered his hands slowly, afraid of what he might see, but the expression she wore was not one of wrath. It was one of sorrow and compassion. Tessin's voice cracked. "I never meant to harm you. My fear, my foolishness." Okiku raised a hand, placing it lightly on his shoulder. Though her touch was as weightless as mist, Tessin felt it, a gentle warmth that startled him. "You were afraid," she whispered. "Fear clouds the heart." Tessin's tears spilled freely. "I have wronged you. I have destroyed everything." No, she said softly. Nothing is destroyed that cannot be forgiven. The night held its breath as her words settled between them, soft as falling petals. Tessin bowed deeply, so deeply his forehead touched the stone. He wept not from fear, but from the unbearable kindness shown to him by the one he had wronged. I will confess, he choked out. I will tell the Lord everything, what happened here, what I did. Okiku tilted her head, watching him with thoughtful eyes. Truth will bring peace, she said, for you, and for me. He lifted his gaze, red-eyed and trembling. And you? Her expression softened into a peaceful smile. I am not bound by anger. I am not tied by vengeance. I will remain, until I am remembered and until you are freed from your burden. Tessan's breath shuddered as he nodded, overwhelmed by her grace. He wiped his tears clumsily, tried to gather himself, and staggered to his feet. I will go to Lord Aoyama now. Okiku rose with him, floating upward like a blossom caught on a warm breeze. I will follow, she whispered. The bamboo stirred gently, as though bowing to her presence. The two of them, one living, one newly luminous, walked toward the main hall. Tessin moved with the heavy steps of a man ready to face the consequences of truth. Okiku drifted behind him, her light dimming slightly with each passing step, not fading but settling into something calm and constant. As they approached the hall, lanterns flickered, never extinguishing, never trembling violently, only bowing in subtle recognition of the spirit who now walked among them. Tessan paused before the sliding door, hands cold but steady. Will he see you? He whispered. Okiku placed a cool, gentle hand near his shoulder, not quite touching, but close enough to be felt. If his heart is open, she murmured, he will. With a deep, steadying breath, Tessan slid the door open, and Lord Aoyama looked up. As moonlight spilled into the room, Okiku's soft glow illuminated the wooden floor, an echo of grace, a spirit seeking not revenge but resolution. Lord Aoyama sat at the low writing table, a partially unrolled scroll before him. A single lantern glowed at his side, casting a warm halo of amber light across the polished floor. He looked up as Tessin entered, eyes sharp, posture composed, yet a faint crease of concern appeared between his brows. Tessin, he said calmly, it is late. What brings you here at this hour? Tessin knelt immediately, bowing so deeply that his forehead nearly touched the floor. His breath trembled, words caught in his throat. My lord, I come with a confession. Aoyama watched him quietly, waiting. Behind Tessin, a soft shimmering glow entered the room. Okiku drifted forward, her form faintly luminous, her kimono trailing like mist. She stood several paces behind the steward, her presence as gentle as moonlight on water. Aoyama's eyes flicked upward for half a heartbeat. A puzzled softness crossed his face, like a man catching the faintest scent of a memory. He could not yet see her fully, but something in the air shifted, stirring the fine hairs on his arms. Tessin swallowed hard. My lord, I have made a terrible mistake. Aoyama leaned forward slightly, his expression calm. Speak. I have broken one of the treasured plates. The words hung in the quiet room like a single drop of water, falling into a still pond. Aoyama did not react with anger. He remained still, listening. Tessan's voice cracked. It was my fault. I took the box from Okiku out of fear. I thought she mishandled them, but it was I who shook it. One fell, one broke. He drew a ragged breath, tears gathering in his eyes. I pushed her. I panicked. I pushed her. His voice dissolved into a whisper, into the well. Silence enveloped the room. Aoyama's gaze lowered, grief clouding his eyes. He closed them briefly, absorbing the weight of Tessin's confession. When he opened them again, they were softer, sadder, but steady. Tessin, he said quietly, I had hoped my household was free of violence and fear. Tessin bowed again, shaking. Punish me as you must. I deserve whatever fate awaits. behind him. Okiku stepped forward, her expression serene. She lifted her hand and placed it lightly atop Tessen's bowed head. Though her touch carried no physical weight, the steward's sobs softened like a child soothed by a mother's lullaby. Aoyama's eyes widened. He felt something, an almost imperceptible change in the air, a gentle brush of coolness like a blessing carried on a breeze. "Okiku," he whispered. The name left his lips before he understood why. It simply rose, unbidden, from some deep place of memory and intuition. Okiku's form shimmered slightly, as though acknowledging the call. She turned her face toward him, her expression tender. Aoyama inhaled sharply. Now he could see her, dimly like a reflection in water, but unmistakably. "Your spirit," he murmured, voice trembling with awe. She bowed gracefully, not accusing, not condemning, only honouring the connection she had once held to the living world. Tessen felt the shift too. He looked up slowly, tears streaking his cheeks, and saw the faint outline of Okiku, a presence soft as dusk, kind as a memory that comforts rather than haunts. "Okiku," he breathed, shame breaking anew. But Okiku smiled gently and shook her head. In a voice that felt like the echo of wind across still water, she whispered, "You are forgiven." Tessen's breath left him in a shudder. He collapsed fully to the floor, not from fear, but from release, as though the weight of his guilt melted into the tatami beneath him. Aoyama bowed his head toward Okiku in reverence and sorrow. "Your spirit remains," he whispered, "but not in anger." Okiku's translucent form brightened softly, like moonlight rising behind clouds. "I remain," she said, "only until peace settles upon this household." Her gaze shifted from Aoyama to Tessan, warm and unwavering. "And now, peace begins." The lantern flame flickered gently, bending toward Okiku as though acknowledging her presence. The air within the room seemed to settle into a cool stillness, a peaceful stillness that wrapped around Lord Aoyama and Tessan like a soft curtain. Aoyama rose slowly to his feet. Though a man of authority, his movements carried reverence rather than command. He stepped forward and bowed deeply, not to a ghost born of fear, but to a soul retained through loyalty, gentleness, and quiet suffering. "Okiku," he said softly, "your presence shames me, not because of wrongdoing on your part, but because you were not protected under this roof." Okiku's expression softened. Her voice flowed like a slow ripple upon water. "This household gave me purpose. I hold no regret." Tessan, still trembling on the floor, managed to raise his head. "You should hate me," he whispered, "yet you stand before me with kindness." Okiku drifted closer, stopping at arm's length, her luminous form glowing faintly like mist backlit by moonrise. "Anger binds spirits," she said gently, "but I am not bound. Not now." Aoyama's eyes grew glassy with emotion he rarely revealed. "Still, your life was taken unjustly. Your peace disrupted." He looked toward the well outside, visible through the hallway's partially open screen. "We must honour you properly. I will have a shrine built near the well, a place to remember your devotion, your service, your spirit." For the first time since her transformation, Okiku's expression brightened fully, a tender, radiant smile that softened the air around her. "Thank you, my lord." Tessan bowed again, this time with new steadiness. "Allow me," he said hoarsely. "Allow me to build the shrine with my own hands. It is the least I can offer." Aoyama nodded solemnly. "You will, and your truthfulness tonight will be remembered." Tessan wiped his eyes, trembling with relief and remorse in equal measure. Okiku turned toward him once more. "You will heal," she said. "Let the past rest. Let the truth free you." As she spoke, a faint light blossomed from within her, soft, serene, like the first glow of dawn over still water. The brightness filled the room not harshly, but as though illuminating the world with memories, forgiveness, and quiet release. Aoyama watched with awe. Tessan covered his mouth, overwhelmed by the beauty of it. The light drifted outward, touching the walls, the tatami floor, the lantern flame. It seemed to wash through the estate, calming every whisper of unease. When it dimmed again, Okiku's form became more defined, less like a translucent reflection, and more like an embodied spirit, graceful and whole in her new existence. "My time here will not be long," she said softly. "I linger only to guide you, to ensure this household finds the harmony it lost." Aoyama bowed his head. "We will honor you, Okiku, in life and in memory." She nodded once, slow and serene. Then she drifted backward, moving toward the veranda. Her steps made no sound. Her form shimmered as she crossed the threshold, moonlight embracing her like a long-lost companion. As she reached the courtyard, she turned, offering them one final gentle smile. "Peace begins tonight," she whispered. And with that, Okiku's luminous form dissolved gently into the silver glow of the moon, like mist rising from a quiet well. In the days that followed, the atmosphere of Lord Aoyama's estate transformed in subtle, tender ways. It was as if a soft veil had been lifted, revealing the quiet beauty that had always been present but overlooked. Servants moved with renewed calm. The tension that once clung to the halls, now replaced by a faint sense of harmony. True to his word, Tessin took responsibility for building the shrine. At dawn each day he carried planks of cedar and tools to the site beside the well. His hands, once restless and anxious, grew steady with purpose. He carved each beam with meticulous care, whispering apologies, prayers and gratitude as he worked. Okiku's presence could be felt there, never seen in full again, but sensed. The bamboo swayed more gently, the moss gleamed brighter on damp mornings, and the water of the well reflected the sky with unusual clarity, as though it carried a blessing. Haru, the master carpenter who had survived the winter storm with Yuki-Onna's help, passed through the estate with a wren one morning on their way to repair the outer gates. They paused near the well, drawn to its serenity. "Do you feel it?" Wren whispered. Haru nodded. "A gentle spirit lingers here." Wren looked around with wide eyes, sensing the same quiet grace that wrapped the place like a soft shawl. Tessin, overhearing them, approached with humility. "The spirit you feel is Okiku," he said quietly. Haru bowed his head respectfully. "A guardian, then?" "Yes." Tessin smiled faintly. "A guardian of peace." The shrine took shape slowly, beautifully. Its roof curved like the wings of a resting crane. Small talismans hung from the eaves, handmade by the servants who wished to honor Okiku's memory. A delicate wooden plaque bore her name, carved with Tessan's own trembling hands. "Honored Spirit Okiku." When the final beam was set in place, Tessan stepped back, wiping his brow. "It is finished." A gentle breeze passed through the courtyard at that moment, stirring the talismans so they chimed softly, a delicate, harmonious sound like distant bells in mist. Tessin closed his eyes. He knew it was Okiku's blessing. That night the household gathered at the shrine. They brought offerings of white rice, plum blossoms and a small ceramic cup of pure water. Aoyama stood at the front, dressed not in formal armor, but in simple robes as a sign of humility. He placed a candle upon the shrine's wooden shelf and lit it with a flint. The flame burned with unusual steadiness, glowing with a warm, unwavering radiance. "Okiku," he said, bowing deeply, "we honor your spirit, your loyalty and your gentle heart. May you find peace in the realms beyond, and may your memory remain a blessing to all who walk these grounds." The servants followed, each offering a silent prayer. Tessin approached last. He placed a single porcelain shard, one of the few recovered from the well, at the foot of the shrine. It glimmered faintly, reflecting the candle's light. "I will carry your kindness always," he whispered. "Thank you for forgiving me." As he stepped back, the flame flickered, not as though disturbed by wind, but as if booing in acknowledgement. Later, long after the others had retired, the estate quieted under the watchful moon. The shrine glowed softly in the night, its silhouette peaceful and complete. And for a brief moment Okiku appeared at its edge, no longer a shimmering echo, but a calm, clear presence. Her form was grace itself, her expression serene. She placed a ghostly hand atop the shrine, her touch light as moonlit dew. "Farewell," she whispered, her voice carrying the gentleness of still water. Then her form softened, dissolving into the night air like a breath. The last echo of her kindness lingered in the rustling bamboo, and the estate slept peacefully, at last. Summer deepened, its warm breath sweeping across the region, carrying the scent of rice paddies and blooming lilies. Fields shimmered beneath the sun, dragonflies darting in quick, jewelled flashes above them. Villagers travelled more freely between towns, and the roads filled with merchants, pilgrims, storytellers and wandering monks. Haru and Ren completed their repairs at Lord Aoyama's estate and resumed their journey across the countryside, the memory of Okiku's peaceful presence lingering like a blessing along their path. Each night at inns and roadside shelters, they shared bowls of rice, dried fish and warm tea, their conversations drifting easily between work, travel, and the spirits they had encountered. "You know," Ren said one evening as they sat beside a quiet stream, "we've met two gentle spirits now. First Yuki-Onna, then Okiku. I used to think ghosts were meant to frighten people." Haru chuckled softly, dipping his hands into the cool stream water. Many stories are told to scare children into behaving, but the old tales, the true ones, they reflect all kinds of spirits. Some protect, some guide, some simply linger because of love or longing. Ren sketched a small circle in the sand with a stick. "Do you think we'll meet another spirit someday?" Haru looked up, thoughtful. The world is wide and the unseen often walks beside the seen. Perhaps one day. Ren grinned. "I hope so." Little did they know, destiny was quietly arranging just such an encounter. Their travels eventually led them north, into the Tohoku region, an area known for its dense forests, misty hills, and remote villages nestled deep in the nature's embrace. Here, traditions ran strong, and stories of house spirits and half-guardians were passed down not with fear, but with fondness. "Master," Ren said as they approached a small village with thatched roof houses, "do you think anyone here might need repairs?" Haru nodded. Houses in colder regions often require constant tending. The wood swells in the humidity, shrinks in the winter, and the hearths crack if not cared for. The village had a peaceful atmosphere. Children played near the riverbank, chasing each other with wooden sticks that served as imaginary swords. Women hung laundry to dry in the summer breeze. Elderly men sat on low stools beneath trees, sharing stories as cicadas droned lazily around them. Haru and Ren approached a modest farmhouse at the village's edge. Its roof sagged slightly, and several boards along the porch were warped. The faint smell of smoke from an indoor hearth drifted through the air. Haru knocked gently. After a moment, the door slid open to reveal an elderly woman with kind, wrinkled eyes. "Yes? How may I help you?" "We are travelling carpenters," Haru said with a bow. "I noticed your porch could use repairs. If you wish, we can offer our services." The woman smiled warmly. "You are most welcome. This house has stood many winters, and its bones grow tired. Please, come in." As they stepped inside, Ren felt a strange sensation like a feather brushing his cheek, or a playful tug at his sleeve. He turned, expecting to see a child, but the hallway behind him was empty. "Master," he whispered, puzzled, "did you feel that?" Haru frowned slightly. "Feel what?" Before Ren could answer, a sudden giggle echoed from somewhere deeper in the house. Light, airy, unmistakably childlike. Ren froze. Haru raised an eyebrow. The elderly woman chuckled, unfazed. "Ah, I see our little friend has already greeted you." Ren blinked. "Little friend?" She nodded fondly. "You may be sharing this house with the Zashiki-Warashi." As if on cue, another soft giggle drifted through the room, warm, mischievous, and inviting. Ren's eyes widened, a mixture of surprise and curiosity sparkling through them. "A Zashiki-Warashi?" he echoed, almost in awe. The elderly woman nodded with a gentle smile. "Yes, a child spirit. They've lived here longer than I have, longer than my mother and her mother before her, a guardian of sorts." Haru bowed respectfully. "Your home is blessed then. It is said such spirits bring good fortune." "That they do," the woman said warmly. "When the little one is happy, this house stays warm even in the cruelest winters. The harvest is plentiful and laughter fills every room. But if they are displeased—" She paused, though her smile never faded. "Well, let us simply say we always try to keep them content." Ren swallowed. "Have you ever seen them?" he asked. "Oh, many times, always in a different way. Sometimes just a flicker at the corner of my eye. Sometimes a small footprint in the ash near the hearth. And once, when I was a girl, I saw a full glimpse, 2 bright eyes peeking over the edge of the futon." She chuckled softly. As if responding, a small pattering sound raced across the tatami mats. Light, quick, unmistakable footsteps. Ren spun around. Nobody there. The old woman waved a hand. "Please, make yourselves at home. I'll bring tea." She shuffled toward the kitchen. As soon as she disappeared behind the Norin curtain, Haru and Ren stood alone in the main room. The air felt warm, as though a small fire crackled invisibly nearby. The scent of roasted barley lingered in the air. Ren leaned close to Haru. "Master, do you think it's safe?" Haru chuckled. "Safer than most spirits. Zashiki-Warashi are benevolent. Mischievous perhaps, but never unkind." No sooner were the words spoken than a small tug pulled at the hem of Haru's sleeve. He glanced down. A tiny handprint, no larger than that of a toddler, appeared momentarily on the fabric, outlined in a faint shimmer of dust. Then it vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Ren's jaw dropped. "Master, you saw that, right? You saw it?" "I did," Haru said with a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Seems we've made a new friend." A sudden burst of giggling bubbled from the corner of the room, this time louder. The shoji screen fluttered slightly, though the summer air was still. A small shadow zipped across the floor, round, childlike, and barely more than a blur. Ren knelt, scanning the floor. "Hello," he whispered. Silence followed. Then, tap. A light poke at the back of his head. He spun around, nothing. Another tap, this time at his shoulder. "Master," Ren whispered, laughing nervously. "I think the spirit is playing with me." "That is their way," Haru said, amused. "They love visitors who bring good intentions." The old woman returned, carrying a tray with 3 cups. "3?" Ren asked, confused. She winked. "One for each of you, and one for our guest. If you don't offer tea, the little one might sulk, and a sulking Zashiki-Warashi is not something you want." She set the cups down. 1 cup rattled softly on its own, as though nudged by an invisible hand. Ren watched with childlike wonder. "Master," he whispered, "I think we're actually sharing tea with a spirit." Haru nodded calmly. "Show respect, warmth and gratitude, and you'll find spirits like this can turn a house into a home." From the far corner came another giggle, warmer this time, almost appreciative, and the air grew just a little cozier. The farmhouse had a warmth unlike any Haru or Ren had felt in their travels, a kind of gentle lived-in comfort that seemed to seep into the walls, the tatami, even the air itself. As they sipped tea beside the elderly woman, Ren couldn't help glancing around, waiting for another sign of the unseen child. "Tell me," Haru said politely, "has the Zashiki-Warashi always made itself known so freely?" "Oh yes," the woman said, blowing softly across the surface of her tea. "Especially when visitors come with honest hearts. They become excited, curious, they love laughter and kindness, and they love to play." Ren swallowed a mouthful of tea and glanced nervously toward the empty corner. Play. How exactly? The woman chuckled. You'll see. As if on cue, a faint creak sounded from the ceiling beams above them. Ren's eyes shot upward. The beams groaned softly, but not with the heaviness of old wood settling. This was more like the playful bounce of someone tiny tiptoeing back and forth. Patter, patter, stop. A hush followed, then poomph. A small cushion from the corner shelf fell to the floor, landing right beside Ren's foot. He yelped softly, then laughed. They dropped it on purpose. The woman nodded merrily. They want you to know they're watching. Haru reached down, picked up the cushion and set it neatly back in place. Your house must never feel lonely. Never, she agreed. When my husband passed for a time I feared the silence, but I soon realized this home was never truly empty. Our little friend stayed by my side. Sometimes I wake in the night to the soft sound of humming, as though a child sits near the hearth. Other times I find rice grains arranged in patterns on the table. They mean well. They mean comfort. Ren smiled softly. That's beautiful. Boom. A sliding door down the hall slid open halfway, then shut again with a decisive click. Ren jumped. Haru chuckled. The old woman shook her head with amusement. They like to show off when new visitors arrive. Ren lowered his cup. May we see them? Truly see them? You might, the woman said as she stood, motioning for the two travellers to follow, but only if they choose. She led them to the far room, one with faded murals on the walls, painted long ago. The floor was covered with tatami that had been replaced many times, but the faint outline of tiny footprints still lingered in the older boards. Ren knelt, tracing one with his fingertip. They're so small. Yes, she said fondly, but they carry a big presence and a big heart. A sudden rush of warm air brushed past Ren's cheek, like a child running by at full speed. He gasped and spun around. A shoji panel at the side of the room trembled. Not from wind, from laughter. A tiny outline, round-faced with tousled hair, appeared in the shadow behind the paper for the briefest second. Ren's breath caught. He saw eyes, bright, curious, shimmering like fleeting sparks. Then the figure dissolved, leaving only a faint glowing imprint that faded like the last ember of a dying candle. Ren whispered, barely audible, Master. I think they showed themselves. And from behind them came a small delighted giggle, full of mischief and warmth. The Zashiki-Warashi was truly welcoming them. The giggle lingered in the air like a musical note, bright and playful. Ren felt it shimmer across his skin, a tickle of warmth, a spark of mischief. He turned in a slow circle, scanning every corner of the room. Come out, he whispered hopefully. Silence. Then tap. Ren nearly jumped out of his skin as a small tatami mat near the far wall shifted. Just a single inch, as though nudged by a tiny hand. Haru stepped forward calmly, bowing in the spirit's direction. Thank you for welcoming us. The mat shifted again, this time bouncing lightly, almost as though the unseen child was hopping on it. The elderly woman chuckled softly. They like you. It's been a long time since they played with anyone new. Most travellers don't stay long enough to earn their curiosity. Ren straightened, heart fluttering with excitement. Should we play back? By all means, she said warmly, but be gentle. They're sensitive even when mischievous. Ren looked around, unsure how to begin. Then he noticed a small wooden ball resting near a basket of folded cloth, round, smooth, painted with a faded red spiral. It looked like it had belonged to a child decades ago. He picked it up carefully. Master, he whispered, do you think? Haru nodded. Try. Spirits understand gestures as much as words. Ren knelt on the tatami, set the ball down and gave it a gentle roll toward the shifting mat. It rolled halfway, slowed dash, stopped. For a moment nothing happened. Then with a soft scrape, the ball rolled back, perfectly, straight, toward Ren. He clapped a hand over his mouth, stifling a delighted laugh. "Master, did you see that?" Haru smiled. "I did. They're answering you." The elderly woman knelt beside him. "They haven't played like this in years. You must have a kind heart." Ren rolled the ball again, a little farther this time. It bumped softly against the mat. The mat quivered. Then the ball lifted just an inch, seemingly suspended in the air by unseen hands. Ren gasped. Haru felt his eyebrows rise in quiet amazement. The ball hung there for 2 beats of Ren's heart, then gently floated back, landing in Ren's open palms. He felt a tiny brush against his fingers, like a child's hand giving his a quick pat. "Thank you," he whispered. A soft giggle rippled across the room, shy, pleased. The old woman inhaled fondly, her eyes growing misty. "They must be so happy. You remind them of the children who once lived here, long before my time." Ren tilted his head. "Children?" She nodded. "This house once sheltered large families, many generations, and among them was a child, playful, bright, full of laughter. The stories say they passed from illness one winter, and their spirit chose to stay, to continue bringing joy to the home they loved." Ren's face softened with warmth. "They stayed because they cared." "Yes," she replied, "and because love binds more gently than sorrow." Suddenly, the room brightened. A faint golden shimmer gathered in the corner, small, round, softly glowing. It wobbled happily, like a lantern caught in a playful breeze. Ren leaned forward, breath held. Slowly, the shimmer shaped itself into the vague outline of a child, short, round-cheeked, with hair like a dark cloud puffed around their face. 2 bright eyes glimmered within the glow, not sharp, not eerie, just sweet. The Zashiki-Warashi tilted its head. Ren felt a surge of warmth in his chest, as though someone had given him a hug from the inside. He smiled. "Hello," he whispered. The little spirit giggled, not hauntingly but joyfully, and bounced once on the tatami, the floorboards creaking in a friendly greeting. The house in that moment felt entirely alive, with memory, warmth, and gentle magic. The tiny glowing figure hovered for a moment, its round cheeks and sparkling eyes radiating a joy so pure that Ren felt his breath catch. The Zashiki-Warashi drifted closer, moving with little bounces as though skipping on invisible feet. Ren remained perfectly still, sensing that any sudden movement might scare the gentle spirit away. He smiled softly, bowing his head just a little. "It's an honor to meet you." The spirit giggled, a chiming musical sound. A puff of warm air brushed Ren's forehead, like a playful child blowing at his hair. Haru bowed respectfully. "Your presence brings great blessing to this home." The Zashiki-Warashi turned its tiny face toward Haru, tilting its head curiously. Then it floated upward, just enough to boop Haru's forehead with a tiny glowing hand. Ren snorted with laughter. Haru blinked. "Well, that's a first." From the kitchen doorway the elderly woman chuckled. "They like you both very much. Spirits like this don't reveal themselves unless they sense kindness." Ren placed the wooden ball on the tatami again. "Would you like to play more?" The little spirit bobbed up and down rapidly, an enthusiastic yes. Ren rolled the ball gently. The Zashiki-Warashi zipped forward in a tiny blur, caught the ball mid-roll, and performed a little mid-air spin before sending it back in a smooth, perfect curve. Ren caught it, eyes wide. "Master!" They did a flip. Another giggle echoed, fuller this time. The spirit drifted toward Haru next. With tiny hands they tugged lightly at the carpenter's tools, inspecting them with bright curiosity. Haru lifted a chisel and held it out. "It's safe. Would you like to see?" The Zashiki-Warashi hovered closer, brushing a tiny finger along the metal edge. It glimmered briefly, as though charging it with a touch of its own magic, then released a soft trill of amusement before drifting away. "They're blessing your tools," the elderly woman said fondly. "They often grant luck to those who are kind to them. Ren beamed. "Master, this means our work will go smoothly." "We can hope," Haru said with a smile. Without warning, a warm gust filled the room, and small objects began to shift. A wooden toy, a folded piece of cloth, and a tiny lacquered dish. They arranged themselves neatly in a circle in the centre of the tatami. Ren leaned forward. "Are they setting something up?" The old woman nodded. "A game, an old one." The Zashiki-Warashi floated above the circle, hands clasped behind their back, looking exceptionally proud of the little arrangement. Ren copied the circle, placing the ball gently inside. "What do we do?" The spirit lowered itself to the tatami, cross-legged, like a child sitting for a story. The glowing little hands patted the floor beside it. The meaning was obvious. "They want us to sit," Ren whispered. Haru lowered himself onto the tatami without hesitation. Ren followed. The elderly woman eased herself down last, her joints creaking softly. The Zashiki-Warashi giggled again, this one soft and satisfied. Then with delicate movements, the spirit tapped the ball once. It rolled in a slow circle around the objects, stopping in front of Ren. He tapped it gently. It continued its circle, stopping before Haru. He tapped it too. Around it went, playful, rhythmic calm, a simple game, a gathering, a moment of pure connection between worlds. The spirit glowed brighter, a little sun of joy filling the room. In that warmth, Ren felt something shift inside him, a deep sense of belonging, of welcome, of being seen by something ancient yet childlike. The loneliness of long roads and cold inns melted. The house felt like home. The little ball continued its patient orbit around the circle, tapping gently before each person as though the Zashiki-Warashi had devised a ritual of its own. Each tap made the spirit's glow brighten just a little, as if joy was something collected moment by moment, like fireflies gathered in a jar. Ren tapped the ball when it reached him again, this time adding a playful spin. The spirit clapped tiny luminous hands, delighted. The ball wobbled cheerfully, then rolled toward Haru, who returned it with calm precision. The elderly woman tapped the ball last, her touch soft and familiar. "It's been many years since I played with them," she whispered. "They miss this." The Zashiki-Warashi drifted close to her, resting a glowing hand against her shoulder, a gesture full of love. The warmth of it spread visibly across her expression, her eyes shimmering with tender memory. "You little rascal," she said affectionately, still as playful as ever. The spirit turned a flip in mid-air, prompting Ren to burst into delighted laughter. "They're amazing," he said, unable to contain his joy. But even as they played, the air around them shifted gently, softening, calming. The Zashiki-Warashi's glow dimmed slightly, not in sadness, but in a way that felt purposeful. The spirit floated to the centre of the room, hovering above the circle of objects. A hush fell. The old woman inhaled deeply. "Ah, I believe they are preparing a blessing." Ren blinked. "A blessing?" Haru nodded, folding his hands respectfully in his lap. Spirits like this protect the home. When they are especially happy, they offer something called Sen no Mawari, the turning of a blessing. The Zashiki-Warashi pressed its tiny hands together. Light gathered between them like a glowing pearl. It expanded slowly, shimmering with shifting colours, pink like dawn, gold like summer grain, deep blue like the evening sky. The light pulsed once, twice as though matching the heartbeat of the house itself. Then the spirit released it. The orb drifted outward like a slow-moving lantern. As it reached the walls, it dissolved gently, scattering into thousands of tiny specks. They floated through the beams, the tatami, the ceiling, the hearth, infusing every inch of the home with warmth. Ren watched in awe. "Master, is this real?" "It is," Haru whispered. "A happy Zashiki-Warashi can bless a house for generations." The tiny specks drifted back toward the centre, forming a soft halo around the little spirit. The Zashiki-Warashi spun once, triumphant, then drifted to the old woman's side, placing a hand on her cheek. She closed her eyes, tears slipping down her wrinkles. "Thank you, child," she whispered. "My home is safe with you." The spirit giggled and nudged her nose gently, like a grandchild showing affection. Ren felt a warmth in his chest that he couldn't explain, like comfort, like hope, like being welcomed into a story that had begun long before he was born. "Master," he whispered, "I don't want to leave." Haru placed a hand on his shoulder. "We won't leave until the repairs are done, and even then the memory will stay." The old woman smiled at them. "You're welcome to rest here tonight. The little one loves company." As if to confirm this, the spirit zipped around Ren's head, leaving a ribbon of shimmering dust that sparkled briefly before fading. Ren laughed. "I think they do." The Zashiki-Warashi settled in the corner, cross-legged, watching them with soft, glowing eyes. For the first time since entering the house, the room felt perfectly whole, protected and loved. It was a house with a spirit's heart, and the night had only just begun. As dusk settled deeper around the farmhouse, the glow of lanterns cast soft amber light through the shoji screens. Crickets and frogs sang outside in the fields, weaving a tapestry of gentle night sounds. Inside, the air was warm and fragrant, with the scent of simmering miso and rice. The elderly woman prepared a simple but comforting dinner. Stewed vegetables, soft tofu, and steaming bowls of barley rice. Haru and Ren sat at the low table, grateful both for the meal and for the company. As they ate, the Zashiki-Warashi hovered near them, bouncing with excitement every time Ren lifted his chopsticks. The spirit seemed especially amused when Ren tried and failed to catch a piece of daikon that slipped back into the bowl. "It's not funny," Ren muttered, cheeks warm. The spirit giggled outright and poked his shoulder playfully. Haru chuckled. "I believe our little friend disagrees." The elderly woman smiled fondly. "They enjoy moments like this. It reminds them of better days." Ren glanced up. "Better days?" She nodded, folding her hands in her lap. "There was a time when this house was full. Families gathered here. Children played until their laughter shook the rafters. The hearth was always lit. Our Zashiki-Warashi was one of those children, loved, cherished, and always darting underfoot." Ren's expression softened. "They must be lonely." "Not lonely," she said, "just wistful. Spirits like this stay because they feel deeply connected to a place, to love, to memory." The Zashiki-Warashi floated to her side, resting a glowing hand against her arm. She touched the air beside them, the closest she could come to returning the gesture. "They stayed for us, and we stayed for them." Ren nodded, swallowing a warm mouthful of rice. "I think I understand." After dinner, the elderly woman prepared sleeping mats for Haru and Ren in the main room. The Zashiki-Warashi followed her, occasionally tugging at the corners of the blankets to help smooth them out. Once the mats were laid out, the old woman bowed. "Rest. Tomorrow will bring work, but also joy." Haru dipped his head respectfully. "Thank you for sharing your home." Ren bowed as well, smiling. "And thank you," he added to the little spirit. A small giggle echoed. When the lanterns were extinguished, the room fell into a tranquil hush. The moon hung high outside, its silver beams casting delicate patterns across the floor. Haru lay down, breathing in the scent of tatami and cedar. Ren pulled his blanket over his shoulders, eyes flickering toward the corner where he sensed the spirit lingering. "Do you think they'll stay with us all night?" Ren murmured. Haru closed his eyes. "It's their home. They'll watch over us." They drifted toward sleep, slowly, peacefully. Moments later, Ren felt the slightest tug at the corner of his blanket. He peeked through half-lidded eyes. A tiny glowing face hovered beside him. The Zashiki-Warashi gently tucked the blanket around his shoulders, patting it twice with little hands. Ren felt his chest warm. "Thank you," he whispered. The spirit bobbed happily and drifted to Haru next. Haru's breathing remained steady, but his lips tilted just slightly, as though he sensed the spirit's kindness even in slumber. Settling itself in the space between them, the Zashiki-Warashi curled up cross-legged, glowing like a small lantern. And as the soft summer night enveloped the house, the spirit kept watch. A guardian of joy, memory and childlike wonder. Dawn arrived gently over the Tohoku countryside, its early light spreading across the rice fields like a soft golden veil. The farmhouse slowly brightened, beams of sunlight filtering through the shoji screens, warming the tatami in long rectangular patches. Haru stirred first. His eyes opened to the peaceful stillness of the room, and to the faint glow of the Zashiki-Warashi, curled up like a luminous child asleep between the two travellers. Its tiny chest rose and fell with slow, rhythmic breaths, the light brightening and dimming softly, like a living ember. Haru smiled quietly. Even spirits rest, it seems. Ren woke next with a small yawn. He blinked at the glowing presence beside him, and his face broke into a soft grin. They stayed. Yes, Haru whispered, careful not to startle their tiny host, and they kept watch. The Zashiki-Warashi stirred, stretching like a cat awakening from a comfortable nap. Its glow pulsed gently, then brightened fully as it floated upright. "Good morning," Ren said, bowing his head slightly. The spirit bobbed in mid-air in what could only be a delighted greeting. The elderly woman slid open the door a moment later. "You've slept well, I hope." "We did," Haru said warmly. "Your home is truly peaceful." She chuckled. "Our little friend makes sure of that." The Zashiki-Warashi zipped to her side, circling her head like a firefly before settling on her shoulder. The old woman fondly mimed patting their tiny head. "Come," she said. "Breakfast is ready." In the kitchen a modest meal awaited. Fresh rice, pickled vegetables and warm broth infused with miso and mushrooms gathered from the nearby woods. As they ate, Ren suddenly paused mid-bite. "Master, are we imagining things, or is the food especially good today?" Haru lifted a brow. He tasted the rice again. It was unusually perfect, soft, fragrant, subtly sweet. The old woman smiled knowingly. "Ah, you taste the blessing." "The blessing?" Ren echoed. "When a Zashiki-Warashi is happy, everything in the house improves. The rice cooks better, the miso deepens, the water becomes sweeter." She poured them each a cup of tea. "Even the tea tastes brighter. Try." Ren sipped and nearly sighed. "It tastes like spring rain." "That's them," the woman said. "They infuse the home with good fortune. It radiates into everything." The little spirit flipped joyfully in the air, clearly pleased with the praise. After breakfast, Haru and Ren gathered their tools and stepped outside to begin repairing the porch and roof. The Zashiki-Warashi followed, sitting on a roof beam above them like a small guardian perched to supervise the work. The moment they began hammering, a strong breeze carried the scent of wildflowers across the yard. A swallow darted overhead, landing near the spirit, chirping brightly before taking off again. Ren laughed. "Even the birds seem happier here." Haru nodded. "That is the nature of a blessed home." Throughout the morning, the Zashiki-Warashi moved with them, sometimes perched on Haru's shoulder, sometimes peeking over Ren's toolbox, sometimes nudging a wooden plank with an invisible hand when Ren reached for it. "Thank you," Ren whispered whenever he felt the playful push. The plank never fell. The saw never slipped. The nails drove straight and true. Haru noted it quietly. "Our work has never gone so smoothly." The elderly woman stood in the doorway watching them with a serene smile. "As long as the little one is happy," she said, "good fortune will follow all of us." And above her, the Zashiki-Warashi shimmered brightly in agreement, its glow warm, steady, and full of childlike joy. By mid-morning, the repairs were well underway. Haru worked on reinforcing the roof beams, his practiced hands guiding each tool with quiet precision. Ren tended to the porch boards, replacing warped planks with fresh cedar, smooth enough to gleam beneath the rising sun. The Zashiki-Warashi hovered between them, sometimes floating low and inspecting Ren's work with comically serious attention, other times drifting high to peek over Haru's shoulder, small, glowing, deeply invested in every detail. "Master," Ren said with a grin, "I think we have a supervisor." Haru chuckled, and a strict one at that. The spirit gave a tiny nod, crossing its arms in mock sternness before dissolving into a giggle that sent motes of warm light drifting across the yard. The elderly woman sat on a low stool nearby, shelling fresh peas into a bowl. "They used to do the same with my husband," she said fondly. "He would pretend to scold them, but he adored their company." Ren paused, glancing over. "May I ask, what was the child like, before they became, well, as they are now?" The woman's expression softened, touched by nostalgia. "Oh, they were a curious one, always exploring, always laughing, a heart full of wonder. They loved games, stories, and anything that sparkled in the sun. They were the kind of child who brightened a room simply by stepping into it." She shelled another pea, her hands steady. "When illness came, it took many lives in the region, and though their body grew weak, their spirit never dimmed. When the end came, it was quiet, peaceful. I was young then, but I remember how the house still felt full even after." Ren swallowed gently. "They stayed because they loved this place." "Yes," she said with a small smile, "and because we loved them." The Zashiki-Warashi drifted closer, resting its tiny glowing hand against her shoulder. She didn't react visibly, but her eyes softened further, as if she had grown accustomed to invisible comforts. Haru hammered a final nail into place and sat back to admire the repaired section of the porch. "This house has a strong foundation, and a strong heart." The old woman looked up at the beams of sunlight cutting through the eaves. "Our home has weathered many winters, but it has always been the spirit within it, seen and unseen, that keeps it standing." Ren set down his tool and leaned forward. "Have there been other visitors who saw them?" "A few," she said, "but not many. Most people pass through without looking deeply, without listening. Spirits like this reveal themselves only to those with warmth in their hearts." Ren felt his face warm. "I'm honored." The Zashiki-Warashi zipped down suddenly, hovering right in front of Ren's nose. The spirit leaned in close, examining him with wide twinkling eyes as though seeing something new and delightful. Ren blinked. "Well, what is it?" The spirit giggled, tapped his forehead with a tiny luminous hand, and darted away in a spinning loop, clearly approving of what it saw. Haru laughed softly. "It seems you've made quite the impression." Ren grinned, cheeks still flushed. "I think I like them a lot." The old woman looked at them warmly. "Then they will remember you, even after you leave." A gentle breeze swept through the yard then, lifting the scent of cedar and earth into the air. The Zashiki-Warashi floated upward into the sunlight, its glow brightening as if soaking in the warmth. Above them, its laughter rang like tiny bells. A house mended, a spirit joyful, a morning wrapped in harmony. As the sun climbed toward midday, shadows shifted across the farmhouse, creating a patchwork of warm light and cool shade. Haru wiped sweat from his brow, satisfied with the morning's progress. Ren stretched his arms above his head, feeling the pleasant ache of honest work. The Zashiki-Warashi hovered nearby, watching with its bright, eager eyes. When Haru finished securing the last beam of the porch, the spirit floated down and pressed both tiny hands against the wood. A soft glow spread from its palms, seeping gently into the grain, like sunlight soaking into water. Ren watched, mesmerized. "They're blessing the repairs." Haru nodded, humbled. "They approve." The spirit drifted back, giving Haru a tiny bow that looked surprisingly formal, and then immediately somersaulted into a giggling spin that ruined any seriousness. Ren burst out laughing. "They're impossible to predict." "That is the nature of children," Haru replied. The elderly woman emerged from the house, carrying a small tray of chilled barley tea. "You've worked hard. Please, take a break." They sat beneath the eaves sipping the cool, refreshing drink. The Zashiki-Warashi perched atop a beam above them, tiny legs dangling, swaying rhythmically as if humming a tune only spirits could hear. Ren glanced up. "They seem so happy today." "They are," the woman said, lowering herself onto the porch with a soft groan. "Spirits feel deeply, and today they feel safe, loved, and entertained." The little spirit leaned over the beam, upside down, studying Ren from above. Ren laughed and reached up gently, offering a finger as though greeting a small bird. To his amazement, the Zashiki-Warashi tapped his fingertip with its own tiny hand, sending a warm tingle up his arm. "Master," Ren whispered, "do you feel that?" Haru smiled. "I do, they're saying thank you." The spirit somersaulted again in agreement, then floated softly to the ground in front of Haru. It tugged lightly at his sleeve, a gentle gesture that seemed more purposeful than playful. "Do you need something?" Haru asked softly. The Zashiki-Warashi gestured toward the interior of the house, then toward the old woman, then toward the tools. Haru watched carefully, interpreting the motions. "You want us to mend something inside?" The spirit bobbed its head up and down rapidly. Yes, yes. The elderly woman tilted her head. "Inside. But most of the rooms are sound." The spirit tugged at her sleeve now, gently guiding her inside. Haru and Ren followed, as the Zashiki-Warashi led them through the narrow hallway, past the kitchen and the main room where they had shared dinner the night before. The air grew cooler as they approached the far end of the house. The spirit drifted to a small sliding door, tucked quietly behind a shelf of old baskets. Ren blinked. "I didn't even notice that door before." "It's hardly used," the woman said. "It leads to a storage room." The Zashiki-Warashi placed its hands against the door and looked back at them expectantly. Haru exchanged a glance with the elderly woman. "May we open it?" "Of course," she said. Haru slid the door open gently. The room inside was dim and cool, with dust motes dancing in the faint light that filtered through a single tiny window. Old belongings lined the shelves. Wooden toys, folded blankets, lacquered boxes, dolls and scrolls. Ren stepped inside, awe filling his voice. "It feels peaceful." But the Zashiki-Warashi drifted toward a small chest at the back of the room, old, worn and tied with a faded cloth. The spirit pressed its hands to it softly. Haru knelt beside the chest, sensing the weight of memory within it. "You want this opened?" he asked. The little spirit nodded. Slowly, with reverence, Haru untied the cloth and lifted the lid. Inside lay a tiny kimono, hand-sewn, white with little red stitching, folded with heartbreaking care. The Zashiki-Warashi's glow softened, dimming into something tender, a quiet longing. Ren's breath caught. "Master, this was theirs." The little kimono lay perfectly still inside the chest, its once bright threads faded by time. Yet even in its age the garment seemed to hold a quiet radiance. Like a keepsake cherished beyond a single lifetime, Ren reached toward it, then hesitated, unsure whether he should touch something so sacred. The Zashiki-Warashi floated closer, its glow dim and tender. With tiny hands it brushed the edge of the cloth, almost a caress, almost a memory. The elderly woman stepped into the room, her breath catching softly. "Oh, I haven't seen that in years." "You knew this was here?" Haru asked gently. She nodded, her voice warm with nostalgia. "Yes. It belonged to the child before they became what they are now. Their mother folded it and placed it here the day they grew ill. She could not bear to move it afterward." Ren touched his fingers to the edge of the fabric. It felt soft, worn, and surprisingly warm. "It's beautiful," he whispered. The Zashiki-Warashi drifted closer, its tiny glowing face softening with something that looked, without any doubt, like longing. It hovered inches above the kimono, then lowered itself as though resting against it. The room seemed to hold its breath. Haru knelt beside the chest, looking between the spirit and the tiny garment. "Is this what you wanted us to see?" The spirit nodded slowly. Then it pointed, a small, decisive gesture toward the chest, then toward the elderly woman, then back to itself. The meaning became clear. Ren inhaled. "They want it returned." The woman's eyes misted. "Returned to them. Recognized, honored." The Zashiki-Warashi drifted upward, floating expectantly in front of Haru and Ren. "What shall we do?" Haru asked softly. The spirit pointed toward the doorway, toward the main room, toward the hearth. Ren's eyes widened. "You want a place? A shrine of sorts?" The spirit twirled in a bright, delighted spin. "Yes." The elderly woman pressed her hand to her heart. All this time, they never asked for anything for themselves, only played, protected, loved. Her voice trembled. "But now I see, they wanted to be remembered, not as a whisper, not as a flicker, but as the child they once were." Haru closed the chest lid gently and stood. "Then we will give them that." Ren bowed deeply to the Zashiki-Warashi. "Where should we put it?" The little spirit zipped toward the main room, hovering above the alcove known as the Tokonoma, a sacred space where families displayed scrolls, flowers, or treasured objects. The elderly woman nodded. "Yes, that is perfect." Together they carried the small chest into the main room. The Zashiki-Warashi floated before them like a lantern guiding their path. Haru set the chest inside the Tokonoma. Ren opened it, revealing the folded kimono. The spirit hovered over it, glow intensifying with tender joy. As they arranged the kimono with care, the air around them warmed. The tatami seemed to hum softly. The wooden beams overhead creaked in a slow, peaceful way, as though the house itself were exhaling a long-held breath. Ren gazed at the spirit. "Are you happy?" The Zashiki-Warashi nodded, then fluttered, then spun, then burst into a small cloud of shimmering motes that sparkled around the room like fireflies. It drifted close to Ren, pressing its tiny forehead to his, an affectionate goodbye to a friend, then to Haru, then to the elderly woman. When it drifted back to the Tokonoma, the glow around it deepened into something calm and full, like a lantern that had found its rightful place. The house felt whole, and the child spirit felt seen. When the little kimono settled into the Tokonoma, neatly arranged, gently honored, the entire room seemed to exhale. The Zashiki-Warashi hovered before it, glowing brighter and warmer than at any moment since Haru and Ren had arrived. Its tiny form pulsed with soft golden light, as though gratitude radiated from its very core. Ren knelt before the alcove, pressing his palms together respectfully. "It's beautiful," he murmured, "just like you wanted." The spirit bobbed politely in midair, a tiny formal bow, then another playful spin because some habits, even for spirits, cannot be entirely restrained. Haru bowed as well. "May this be your place of honor for generations." The elderly woman stood beside them, her trembling hand covering her heart. "My little one, we've given you back what you lost. You're whole again." At her words, the Zashiki-Warashi drifted to her side and rested its glowing forehead against her shoulder. The gesture carried such affection, such memory, that she reached up instinctively, her hand passing through light, yet warmed by it all the same. A soft wind moved through the room, though no door or window was open. The glow around the spirit intensified, filling the space with a gentle radiance that felt like a blessing. Ren watched wide-eyed. "Master, what's happening?" Haru felt it too, a shift, a softening, a presence changing shape. The spirit is transforming. The Zashiki-Warashi lifted higher, drifting toward the rafters like a rising lantern. Its glow changed from bright gold to pale amber, then to a soft, peaceful white. The air around it shimmered, as though wrapped in the hush of fresh snowfall. The elderly woman wiped a tear. It means they're content. Their heart is at rest. A tiny laugh, no louder than the sound of a bell charm brushing against silk, echoed through the room, and then the little spirit lowered itself again, stopping just in front of Ren. It reached out. Ren blinked. Me. The spirit placed its tiny glowing hand on Ren's chest, right over his heart. A warmth spread through him, calming, comforting, full, not overwhelming but deep, like a memory of childhood joy he had forgotten he'd once known. "Thank you," he whispered, without knowing exactly why or how he understood, but understanding all the same. A single glowing tear, more like a bead of light than water, formed at the edge of the Zashiki-Warashi's eye. It drifted downward, landing on the kimono below. The fabric glowed briefly, absorbing it. The spirit's outline softened, growing more translucent, not fading in sorrow but completing its circle. "Are they leaving?" Ren whispered, throat tight. The elderly woman shook her head gently. "No, not leaving. Becoming what they were always meant to be." The Zashiki-Warashi hovered above the tokonoma one last time, its tiny hands pressed together in gratitude. Then it burst, quietly, beautifully, into a cloud of shimmering particles that drifted across the room like dandelion seeds on a spring breeze. The particles settled into the kimono, the beams, the tatami, the very breath of the house. A pulse of warmth spread through the walls, the floors, the lanterns. The house was blessed. Truly, deeply blessed. Ren exhaled in wonder. "They're part of this home now." Haru nodded softly. "And this home is part of them." And so, with the little spirit at peace and the old house warmed by its gentle blessing, the world around Haru and Ren seemed to exhale. The air softened. The day slowed, and even the distant mountains, standing quiet beneath the sky, felt wrapped in a hush of calm. Take a slow breath here, letting the stories settle around you like a soft blanket. You've wandered through snow-lit forests, through moonlit wells, through warm wooden rooms where laughter still lingers in the tatami. Every footstep gentle, every spirit kind. Drift now, and let the night carry you gently into dreams. Good night, dear listener.